Okay, so when you think of D-Day, you probably picture the beaches of Normandy, right? The storming of the beaches, the huge turning point of the war. But what if I told you the story really starts a year earlier, across the English Channel? It begins in a single English town that was totally transformed into this massive machine for invasion. So let's dive in and see just how they built this thing.
So, this is the master plan. Operation Overlord. I mean, just look at the sheer scale of it. All those arrows pointing at France, this colossal Allied assault. But here's the kicker. For any of this to actually happen, for this grand strategy to work, it needed something huge to happen on the ground first. And not in France. Nope. It happened in quiet coastal towns like Plymouth, in England. This is where the real work began, where the invasion was literally built from the ground up.
All right, first things first. How on earth do you take a normal, everyday port town and turn it into the launch pad for liberating an entire continent? Well, it starts with two things: a ton of people and basically re-engineering the entire landscape.
See, Plymouth wasn't just some random spot for ships to park. It was officially designated a U.S. Advanced Amphibious Base. That's a mouthful, but what it means is that it became a primary nerve center, a critical staging ground for all the American forces heading to Normandy. The whole town, I mean the entire town, was basically drafted into the war effort.
And if you want to get a sense of the scale here, just wrap your head around this number. More than 50,000 troops. And that's not in total. That's just passing through one single camp in Plymouth on their way to Normandy. 50,000. That's like the population of a small city, all funneling through this one spot.
Okay, so you've got the people, tens of thousands of them. Now what? Well, now you need the hardware. This is where they started physically building the war machine, piece by massive, heavy piece, right there in the harbor. Take a close look at this picture. Those aren't your typical docks. Nope, those are massive floating piers being put together by the U.S. Navy Seabees. Why? Well, the harbor just wasn't big enough for the absolute beast of an invasion fleet that was coming. So the solution was kind of brilliant. They just built more harbor, using these giant steel pontoons to literally extend the land out into the sea. And this right here, this just captures the nonstop action perfectly. On one side, you've got crews putting together barges from these pre-made kits, kind of like giant deadly Lego sets. At the exact same time, on the other side of the harbor, you've got these colossal cranes unloading ships that have just sailed in directly from the States. It was this incredible, frantic dual assembly line, building stuff here, unloading stuff from there, all at once.
Okay, so there's a huge logistical puzzle they had to solve. How in the world do you get a 30-ton tank from a wet, muddy English beach onto a landing craft without it just sinking? The answer was this really clever bit of engineering they called a hard. And what is it? It's basically a custom-built, reinforced road that they laid right over the top of the existing beach. And here's what one of them looked like. This is Turn Chapel Hard. You can see it right there, that wide concrete ramp sloping straight down into the water. It might not look like much, but this simple, rugged bit of engineering was the absolute key. This was the missing link. This is what allowed tanks and trucks to literally just drive off the land and right onto the ships heading for France. But, this whole invasion machine, it wasn't just steel and concrete. It was powered by people. We're talking tens of thousands of young guys, a long, long way from home, suddenly living and working right next to the local English population. So, what was that actually like? What was life on the ground?
Well, for starters, a whole new city of camps just popped up all around Plymouth. You had places like Queen Anne's Battery, which could house over 1,000 men. There was a full-on field hospital ready for anything. And these marshalling areas, that's where troops would gather right before shipping out. But it wasn't all military. You also had places like the American Red Cross Club, which was so important, a little slice of home where guys could relax. It really was its own little world.
And check out this quote from a local newspaper at the time. I just think this is fascinating. The first things they have bought have been souvenirs for the folks at home. But shop assistants have remarked that for the most part, they are difficult to please. It's such a human detail, isn't it? You've got these young GIs on the brink of the biggest battle of their lives, and they're wandering around English shops trying to find the perfect souvenir to send back home.
And yeah, you can see the article right here. The local papers were full of this stuff. Stories about Red Cross parties were printed right next to reports on what the GIs were buying in the shops. It's wild to think about. This massive military buildup, this friendly invasion, had just become a totally normal part of everyday life in town. So, after more than a year of all this, the building, the training, the waiting, the moment finally came. The D-Day machine, built right here in Plymouth, was finally ready to go. Okay, before we see the fleet leave, let's do a quick crash course on all these acronyms. It's kind of like alphabet soup. You've got your LSTs, those are the big boys, the landing ship tanks. Then LCIs, landing craft infantry. Those carried hundreds of soldiers. And then the famous one, the LCVP. That's the small boat you always see in movies. Knowing the difference really helps you see how complex this whole operation was.
And this is it. This is the moment, the final boarding. You're looking at troops from the U.S. 29th Infantry Division, the same guys who would soon face the absolute hell of Omaha Beach. And here they are, in these final, quiet days, loading their tanks and all their gear onto one of those massive LSTs. Everything, all the preparation, all the waiting, it all came down to this.
And this shot really shows you the different parts of it, side by side. On the one hand, you have the colossal LST. It's basically a floating garage for tanks. And right next to it, the smaller landing craft infantry, just packed shoulder to shoulder, with the soldiers who would lead the assault. Two totally different kinds of ships, but they shared one single, terrifying purpose. And then, on June 5th and 6th, under those gray English skies, they were gone. The entire fleet, this incredible machine that was forged in Plymouth, steamed out into the Channel. Destination, Normandy. The long, long wait was finally over. So when you think about it, Plymouth wasn't just part of the D-Day story. It was an essential piece of the machinery. An entire English town was transformed top to bottom into the launch pad for the liberation of an entire continent. And that really makes you think, doesn't it? Behind every famous moment in history, every big battle, how many other stories like this one are just hiding in plain sight? How much immense human effort, how much engineering and logistics went into making that one famous moment even possible?